Greetings, beautiful viewers. This is Smitten. Welcome to How to Fail at Smite, my original Smite series where I pick up a new god for the first time and poke fun at how I play so that both of us can learn from my mistakes. Episode 14, Isis. Well, beautiful viewers, we're back with another new god to show off, and this time it's Isis, the goddess of magic, a mage support, and right up my alley, I think. I jumped in a game with a group of viewers in Gank First Gaming's own Zezerman and Stooley to see if Isis can fly or if her wings are just made of wax. Luckily, we're not up against a Raw, so I don't have to worry about getting too close to the sun. While we were busy clearing out the blue buff, our Neith was busy dying to an early invasion. Don't worry, Bacchus won't be escaping either. Our opponents pick up an early advantage in Zezzy, and I know it's all up to us. We find ourselves matched against a recently buffed Hercules who knows how to hit his Earthbreaker, unlike my impressive skills with my Wing Gust, which I only managed to land a single hit. In left lane, we've picked up the edge on our opponents, but haven't even the scoreboard any, and Zezzy decides it's time to press the attack for some reason. He moves in and focuses Hercules, bringing him below half health, allowing his driving strike to stun. Zezzy discovers this too late and falls before I decide doing something might be a decent idea. Both of our opponents are almost dead, so I use Spirit Ball for the first time and forget to activate it, treating Apollo to a spectacular, if not ineffective, light show. Unable to muster the skill to capitalize on my opponent's weakened condition, Hercules backs and the segment ends with our opponents holding a healthy lead. At least when Zezzy died, it gave me a stack of my passive, giving me 4 HP and MP5. Thanks, Zezzy! Apollo and I trade shots and I land most of my hits before we both decide to back off. Chapter 1. Left lane can't ult. Yay! I haven't died yet! Tragically, neither of our opponents have either, seeing as I still only have 2 stacks on my passive. That fact seems to have made Herc either excited or angry as he throws his boulder prematurely. Needless to say, I haven't become much better at connecting with my abilities, so it seems to be an even trade-off. But now I sense the moment to use my ultimate circle of protection has arrived, which sure does look amazing. Not really sure what it does, but it seems to be pushing them back. With all kinds of ults used to no effect, we find ourselves yet again at an advantage, but also stuck in a stalemate. And by some miracle of modern science, my Spirit Ball actually hits Apollo, as do some of my Wing Gusts. Apollo escapes using the moves, and Herc kills off our minions with Hand of the Gods to prevent us from tower diving. And instead of realizing this and going to collect buffs, we decide to needlessly stick around. Apollo went back to heal up as he was the only person left to still have his ult, and we spent half a minute up against the tower accomplishing nothing. As he drops down and mesmerizes me, we find it prudent to fall back. With Apollo slowed by Dispel Magic, I get behind Zezzy and line up a shot with Spirit Ball that I managed to land. As I turn back to face my opponents, I notice Hercules is almost dead and push forward with Wing Gust before realizing that I'm not really in the right position and pay for it with my life and my lowly second stack on my passive. Chapter 2. Disappointment on all fronts. We return to find our heroine wandering through a forest on our way to mid lane. Hey, it's a buff! No time like the present, I think to myself, and started on the hapless Cyclopi, and before long I realized that Isis isn't all that great at clearing buff camps. But a level 10 Neith is pretty amazing at stealing them and murdering you in the process. Luckily, Stooley is just around the corner to keep her at bay and allow me time to secure the— Wait! Where are you going? Well, that was disappointing and fruitless, but I noticed that Zezzy was getting pushed pretty hard in left lane, so I decided I'd best return with the quickness. Gotcha, buddy! I get the jump on Hercules and actually land all of my attacks and decide it's time for circular protection. Herc hits Zezzy with his excavate before dying due to being way out of position. My circle of protection keeps Zezzy alive while I get pursued to Apollo and narrowly miss with my Spirit Ball, preventing an amazing reversal of fortunes and content myself to slowly whittling away at the Roman ranged. Even though Apollo just narrowly avoided death, I see him rise from the jungle bestriding his chariot, consumed by lust for Zezzy blood. However, there was no Artemis to be had and we square off. If I hadn't been so eager to retreat, I would have easily secured that kill, but all things in moderation. Chapter 3. I don't even know what this does. 10 minutes in and I still have no idea how to use my abilities, and therefore just use them at random. I launch Spirit Ball at the pair, but the obnoxious glowing ball just sails right past them. Well, I've got Dispel Magic, what does that look like? I get so caught up in my experimentation that I almost failed to realize that we were being baited. Zezzy and I turn and haul feathers down the lane to meet up with our minions. I turn around to see brave Zezzy backpedaling, and as our minions clash together, I patiently ready my glowy ball and wait for that perfect moment. I did it! I stunned Apollo! I waste no time in displaying my excitement as I flap around him and landing 3 out of my 4 Wing Gusts. Once again, my excitement has moved me way out of position. Apollo chips away at my health as I try to land my ultimate to save both Zezzy and I, but a well-timed mesmerize seals the fate for both of us. Hercules takes a few swings at me and picks up the double kill. Chapter 4. The Inattentive Slave Driver. We return to left lane where I find Zezzy facing off with Neith in the jungle. I launch another glowy ball and round the corner to see Apollo knock Zezzy back towards me with his ult and gets picked off by Neith. I hightail it back to my tower and juke for longer than is needed, and once I realize that Apollo is pulled back, I stop for a moment and apologize to Zezzy for being useless. Sorry. On top of the list of Zezzy's impressive attributes, he's a realist, and as such feels it's best to part ways from this match, but that doesn't make for a good fail video. Just as I vote no for the surrender, I almost wish that I would have, as Apollo and his 6 Roman range easily take out my tower, leaving me in a vulnerable position. I circle back to my minions, hoping they will be enough to block his attempts at murder, and I'm greeted by Zuzzy, whose volley sends Apollo back up the lane. Despite being critically low on health, I refuse to be a coward when I need to be and rush up to stun Apollo. With 98 health points left, it's time for me to be a bit more cautious. I pick up some magical protections with Dispel Magic and turn to retreat. Apollo moves forward to take me out, but I flutter back and away from him with my wing gusts. I briefly entertain the thought of pursuing, but I'm confident in my lane partner who picks up the kill and I finally get to port back to base. Chapter 5, False Assurance. Back on the battlefield, Zuzzy and I are making our first attempt to catch up on our farm at the speed buff. I'm far too distracted by the sound of my bird bombs to notice the approaching red outlines. Guan Yu and Isis round the corner and steal the buff as Zuzzy and I return to retreat. I try to get some damage in on the pair with my wing gust, but only end up isolating myself. Instead of turning to run in the safe direction, I run back into the jungle. Thankfully, Stooley was there to aid me with his Kraken, and we find ourselves in the first team fight of the match. With both Isis ults down, Vaspa launches in and belches the enemy Isis to death. I feel confident with my whole team there, and despite being low in health, I stick around long enough to see Guan Yu pop Girdle of Might and smack me down with his broom. Chapter 6, Role Confusion. Once I'm up, I see that my old friends Apollo and Hercules are positioned to take down our left tower and move up to defend it. At 17 minutes in, I am just now reaching level 13 and throw a point into my ultimate. Our tower is nearly dead and Zuzzy and I are having a hard time clearing out the minions. I'm ready to give them a taste of their own medicine and ready up my spirit ball, only to have it released too early, again! Depth perception issues and embarrassment aside, the 4 of us start doing this awkward shuffle before I realize that Apollo is about to tower dive with his ult. Once he lands, Zuzzy and I are knocked back into the wall, and just about the time I realize their whole team has rotated, we're already dead. Chapter 7, Running Through the Problem. Back to middle lane to defend our Phoenix, the enemy team is missing, but the familiar sound of coins dropping alerts me to the fact that they have just taken down Gold Fury. Zuzzy is in a very unsafe position, and I pace back and forth before I tell him he needs to get out of there. Stooley and I turn our focuses towards a lonely Neith who manages to snare us. Just as she starts to focus Stooley, I return the favor and land the stun on the Spirit Ball. Thanks to his whirlpool and knockback, Neith backflips away from the line of fire and into the jungle. She's smarter than the average Neith, however, and waits in the jungle until her minions are close enough for her to safely emerge. I detonate my Spirit Ball on the minions rather than the more deserving Neith. It's at this time I finally start to recognize that I might not be able to handle level 20 Neith, who's come equipped with the Fire Giant buff. While Zuzzy recognizes that being in the jungle trying to farm to get back into the game isn't the best idea when you don't have any wards and pays for that valiant attempt. While they close in on our Phoenix, Apollo comes flying in on his chariot once again and lands only to be greeted by a stun I actually managed to land. It doesn't seem to matter as Guan Yu was already on top of us with his ultimate. Chapter 8, Worth It. It's been a full minute since they last killed me, and we've rejoined the match to find they've been unable or unwilling to finish the game. Whatever the reason, I'm intent on defending our right Phoenix from the lone Hercules who's trying to put the brakes on our defense. I managed to see him off by clearing out the last of his minions before heading back towards our Minotaur to make some bad decisions. Alone, I charge headfirst into the entire enemy team, and as Herc sends me flying into the crowd, I notice the opposing Isis is nearly dead and decide if nothing else, I'm gonna burn her down. I successfully managed to seal the deal with a well-timed Spirit Ball before finally succumbing to my opponents. Eventually, they managed to finally commit to the win and take down our Minotaur. As always, a good game to my allies and a good game and well played to my tryhard opponents. To be fair though, they may not be tryhards, maybe they're doing scrims. Honestly, I was a little salty over this match because when I heard that the new god was a mage support, I figured I'd be raffle stomping. Either way though, I was outplayed and the enemy team deserves an unsalted good game. In my opinion, Isis isn't anything like the other support mages, and to be perfectly honest, I literally didn't look at her abilities prior to or during this match, so I was a little unprepared for what she turned out to be. She may have been exceptionally difficult for me because so much of her gameplay is dependent on tricky skill shots and pristine timing. She has incredible crowd control and mobility, but is a little low on defense. I will most likely try to pick her up again as I have only played this one game with her. I mean, come on, no one is perfect at a god the first time they play them, right? On to the abilities. We'll start off with Isis's passive Funeral Rites, which comes in 2 parts. Firstly, Isis gives off an aura within 30 feet of her location, which gives all friendly gods a boost of 2 HP 5 and MP 5 per stack. And for every player death she witnesses, these bonuses increase up to a maximum of 10 stacks. Unfortunately, these precious stacks are lost on death. Secondly, her basic attacks deal 30 magical damage rather than physical damage and scale by 25% of her magical power. She also attacks in a rather slow 3-hit combo. The first 2 attacks dealing damage is normal, but the third deals additional damage on top of becoming an AoE, while coming at the cost of decreased attack speed. Her number 1 ability is Wing Gust. Didn't think those wings on her were just for show, did you? Nope, they're used for her primary source of damage. When she flaps her wings, she gains a temporary 25% buff to her movement speed and can move backwards without suffering a movement penalty for the 3-second duration. In addition to increased mobility, she can also fire off 4 gusts in a line attack, dealing 35 to 115 magical damage per shot, scaled by 40% of her magical power. This ability is her primary damage dealer and comes with a cooldown time of 12 seconds, 9 with Chronos Pendant or Breastplate of Valor. Beyond being the brunt of her damage, it doubles as an escape/pursuit ability if all else fails. Throw a point into this at level 1 and max it first. Next up, we have her number 2 ability, Spirit Ball. Aptly named, this ability sends an orb of light in the direction it is cast. Isis can detonate this ability herself at any point before it reaches its maximum range by activating the ability again, stunning those within the 10-foot radius of the blast for 1 second and dealing 70 to 230 magical damage, scaled by 70% of her magical power. If it reaches max range and detonates on its own, it deals 1.5 times more damage and stuns a half second longer. This ability is great for initiation, escaping, or getting that last hit on your opponent. I'm a little torn over its prioritization though, because depending on who you're with and who you're laning against, her next ability might be a stronger pick to level first. Either way, I'd suggest throwing a point into this at level 2. You can max it second if you want the raw damage from the ability, but leveling it further doesn't reduce the cooldown or increase the stun duration, and at level 1 it only costs 70 mana to cast. At the moment, I'm not sure on the correct choice and would say it is highly dependent upon who you're laning with and against. If they're squishy, max this second. If they're not, the next ability might be better. Dispel Magic is her third ability. This ability is truly multi-dimensional and has 4 great effects. Not only does it silence for 1 to 2 seconds and slow the enemies hit by 35%, Dispel Magic also reduces their magical protections by 10 to 35% for 1.5 to 2.5 seconds and applies those protections to all nearby allies that are within range of Isis's passive. This ability is absolutely amazing, a range silence, slow, and debuff. Throw a point into it at level 3 and max it second if you don't need the burst damage from Spirit Ball due to the reduced protections and the scaling of the silence, or max it third if you just need that burst. I'm leaning towards this ability as the stronger pick to max second, but we'll see how it goes with more experience. Finally, we have our ultimate ability, Circle of Protection. There's no better way to plant your flag and claim territory than with this unique ultimate. Your allies will be glad to have you around in teamfights because they will take 30% less damage while they are in range. The damage that they do take on only beefs up the end result. When Isis activates her staff again, the area explodes, dealing 160 to 320 magical damage, scaled by 50% of her magical power to enemies, and healing your allies by 80 to 160 plus 25% of her magical power. But that's not all. If you wait until it's fully charged to detonate, a multiplier of 1.5 to 3.5 kicks in and increases the damage and healing done. This is one of those ults that you should level whenever you can. The fact that it only has a 60-second cooldown means that with cooldown reduction, you're looking at a seriously spammable ult. Well, as far as ults go, that is. On to the item builds. I prefer skipping over any starting items in favor of Magi's Boots and Inactive if I'm in a side lane, but if you go mid, Vampiric Shroud wouldn't be a bad choice. After your boots are completed, you have some options, and they will depend on how you want to play Isis and what you've been paired against. If you're going for a damaging mage, pick up Chronos Pendant to get that heavenly cooldown reduction and some extra MP5. With Chronos Pendant, your ultimate's cooldown is reduced to 45 seconds, 39 seconds with the cooldown buff, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Next, you'll probably want to pick up Voidstone under most circumstances for the magical protection, power, and penetration, because it's unlikely you aren't going to be encountering any other magelings. If you've lucked out and they're light on magical damage, you can pick up Spear Mages, which works well with Isis's abilities. Next up, grab Rada Tahuti if you're feeling farmed, or Obsidian Shard if they're stacking magical protections. After you've completed one, pick up the other. For your last item, you have a lot of options to play around with. Gem of Isolation isn't a bad choice on her, or if they're heavy on heals, you can pick up Divine Ruin, while of Absolution or Hide Nemean Line are both good choices if you're up against physical opponents, and Bulwark of Hope if they're magical heavy. If you're going for a more support role or if you've paired up against some aggressive physical gods, pick up Breastplate of Valor instead of Chronos Pendant for the additional mana, physical protection, and identical cooldown reduction. And after you've completed Valor, delay your Voidstone and get Book of Thoth instead. This next build has a longer ramp-up time, but you also pick up extra survivability early on without sacrificing much in the damage department if you can keep your farm up. And so concludes the guide on Isis. If we tickled your fancy, make sure to rate and subscribe for upcoming videos. You can also come hang out with us on Facebook and Twitter. And don't forget to follow us on Twitch to see us streaming live. Links in the description. Feel free to leave your suggestions on how to play this god as well as any feedback you have for us in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. I'm Smitten, and I'll see you next time.
Good game. Bye.
Well, that was disappointing and fruitless, but I noticed that Zuzia was getting pushed pretty hard in left lane, so I decided I'd best return with the quickness.